The valley was a place of absolute darkness. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for a dawn that might never arrive. The air, thick with the damp smell of cold earth and pine, was heavy and still. No moon dared to show its face, and the stars were hidden behind a thick blanket of low-hanging clouds. This was the kind of blackness that swallowed sound whole, where the gentle rustle of a nocturnal animal or the distant sigh of the wind in the trees were the only proof that the world hadn't stopped turning. It was a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down on everything. This was the hour before the first hint of gray light, the time known as the dead of night. In this deep, cold pocket of the world, everything slept. The scattered farmhouses were dark, their occupants lost in dreams. The winding roads were empty, ribbons of black asphalt cutting through even blacker fields. Even the air itself seemed to be asleep, hanging motionless between the steep, forested slopes that cradled the valley. The only movement was the slow, almost imperceptible creep of the cold as it settled deeper into the ground, frosting the tips of the grass and chilling the surface of the silent river. The mission relied on this oppressive stillness. The planners had chosen this time and this place with a specific purpose in mind. They knew that in this deep, pre-dawn quiet, human senses would be at their dullest. Guards would be tired, their attention wandering after a long, uneventful night. The cold would make them huddle deeper into their shelters, less willing to venture out into the biting air. This natural state of low alert was the perfect camouflage, a cloak of complacency that was more effective than any technology. The entire operation was built on the simple truth that nature itself could be the greatest ally. Every element of the environment was a factor to be considered. The temperature, the humidity, the complete lack of ambient light, all had been programmed into the mission parameters. The planners understood that the enemy, no matter how well equipped, was still human. They would be fighting against their own biology, their bodies screaming for sleep. The silence of the valley was not just an absence of noise, it was a weapon. It created a false sense of security, a belief that nothing could possibly be moving in such a dead and silent world. It was into this perfect sleeping trap that the first wave was about to be sent. From the west, they came. Not with the roar of jets or the thumping of helicopter blades, but with a sound that was barely a whisper. A squadron of drones, codenamed Phantoms, slipped into the valley's airspace. They were small, matte black machines designed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their electric motors were tuned to a frequency that was almost inaudible to the human ear, a low hum that was easily lost in the ambient sounds of the night. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, like birds of prey riding a thermal current that wasn't there. Each one was an extension of the will of its operator, miles away. These were not ordinary drones. They carried no GPS transponders and emitted no radar signals that could give away their position. Their navigation was far more sophisticated, a product of painstaking intelligence work. Weeks of satellite imagery and covert reconnaissance had been used to build a perfect, three-dimensional map of the valley in their memory banks. They were flying blind, yet they saw everything. The drones cross-referenced the terrain below, the curve of the river, the shape of a hill, the outline of a specific patch of forest, with their internal maps. They were ghosts navigating a world they had already memorized. So far, the mission was proceeding with textbook perfection. The Phantoms maintained their formation, a loose diamond pattern that allowed for maximum flexibility while minimizing the risk of collision. They flew low, just above the treetops, using the natural contours of the land to mask their approach. The command team, huddled in a darkened room, far from the front line, watched the telemetry data stream in. Each drone was a green icon on their screens, inching its way steadily towards the objective. The silence in the control room mirrored the silence in the valley. A tense, focused quiet, filled with unspoken anticipation. The drones were the silent predators of this new age of warfare. They did not need to see in the conventional sense. They felt their way through the darkness. Onboard sensors detected minute changes in air pressure and temperature, allowing them to adjust their altitude and speed to remain hidden in the landscape's dead zones. Their movements were fluid and precise, a ballet of technology and tactics unfolding in the dead of night. They were more than just machines. They were instruments of surprise, designed to strike from a direction the enemy would never expect, at a time they would be least prepared. The first sign of trouble appeared as a pair of faint yellow lights. A vehicle was moving on a lonely service road that ran parallel to the river. It was a Russian UAZ 452, a tough, boxy van known to the soldiers as a bukanka. It was likely a routine patrol, a simple check of the perimeter. But in a mission where silence and invisibility were everything, any unexpected presence was a major threat. The command team's screens flagged the vehicle immediately, a red box appearing around the heat signature. The calm, steady progress of the green icons was now interrupted by a new, unpredictable variable. The drones were programmed for this. As one, the squadron reacted. They didn't scatter or flee. Instead, they executed a pre-planned maneuver called a terrain hug. Their motors whirred almost silently as they descended, dropping from just above the treetops to a mere 20 feet above the ground. They followed the shallow depression of the riverbank, using the earth itself as a shield. From the perspective of the patrol vehicle, the sky remained as black and empty as before. The drones had simply vanished into the landscape's folds, becoming one with the shadows they were born to inhabit. The tension in the command room rose by several degrees. The operators, their faces illuminated by the glow of their monitors, zoomed in on the vehicle. They could see the heat signatures of two soldiers inside, one driving, the other in the passenger seat. The van was moving slowly, its headlights cutting a lazy path through the darkness. Were they just on a routine drive, or had something alerted them? Every second the vehicle remained in the area increased the risk of detection. A stray reflection, a slight anomaly in the sound of the wind, anything could give the game away. The drones held their position, their rotors barely turning, as they hovered in the cold, damp air. They were waiting, patient and unmoving. The UAZ continued its slow crawl along the road, oblivious to the silent predators lurking just a few hundred feet away. The command team tracked its progress, their fingers poised over their controls, ready to react to the slightest deviation. The vehicle passed the drone's position and continued on its way, its taillights eventually disappearing around a bend in the road. The immediate danger had passed, but it was a stark reminder of how close to the edge they were operating. The valley was not as asleep as they had hoped. With the patrol vehicle gone, the Phantoms ascended back to their cruising altitude, resuming their steady advance. But a new obstacle now presented itself, one that was invisible to thermal sensors and satellite imagery. A network of old power lines strung between wooden poles crisscrossed this section of the valley. They were thin, dark cables, hanging like a spider's web in the blackness. For the low-flying drones, they were a deadly threat. A single collision would not only destroy a drone, but could also create a cascade of sparks and noise, alerting every defender for miles around to their presence. The command team had anticipated this. The three-dimensional memory maps were detailed, but they weren't perfect. Small, man-made structures like these wires were a known risk. This was where the skill of the human operators came into play. Switching to high-fidelity, low-light cameras, the operators took direct control. The view on their screens became a grainy, monochromatic world. The power lines were faint, ghostly lines against the slightly less black sky. It was like trying to thread a needle in a dark room, with millions of dollars and the entire mission on the line with every move. What followed was a slow, nerve-wracking dance. The operators guided their drones with meticulous care, one by one. They made them dip and swerve, rising over one cable and then sinking to pass under another. The movements were small and precise, executed with a surgeon's steadiness. Each operator was focused solely on their own machine, their world shrinking to the grainy image on the screen and the subtle pressure of the joystick in their hand. The other green icons on the main display became a secondary concern. The only thing that mattered was navigating this invisible web without making a single mistake. The last drone in the formation cleared the final wire. A collective, silent sigh of relief went through the command room. The squadron reformed, the green icons snapping back into their diamond pattern. They had passed another test, proving that the combination of advanced technology and human skill was a powerful one. But the incident had cost them precious time. The sky in the east was no longer pure black. A faint, almost imperceptible hint of deep indigo was beginning to bleed into the horizon. Dawn was coming, and they were still miles from their target. The pressure was mounting. The command team knew the clock was ticking. The delays from the patrol and the power lines had put the mission behind schedule. The defenders would soon be more alert as the shift changed and the sun began its slow ascent. Sticking to the original, cautious plan was no longer an option. They needed to create a diversion, a big one. It was time to activate the second part of the plan, a high-stakes deception known as the Neptune Gambit. The lead operator gave the command, and a new set of icons appeared on the main tactical display. From a different launch site, miles to the north, a second wave of drones took to the air. These were the Neptunes. Unlike the stealthy Phantoms, they were designed to be seen and heard. They were larger, flew higher, and, most importantly, they carried active radar and GPS transponders that openly broadcast their position. They were programmed to mimic the flight profile of incoming cruise missiles, a threat that no air defense system could ignore. Their purpose was not to attack, but to draw the enemy's fire, to make them look north while the real threat approached from the west. The reaction from the defenders was immediate and exactly as predicted. Russian air defense radars, previously passive, lit up. The command team watched as enemy systems locked onto the Neptune decoys. On their screens, they saw the telltale signs of search and track radars sweeping the northern sky. The enemy's attention was being pulled away from the quiet, dark valley and towards the phantom menace that seemed to be screaming towards them from the coast. The bait was taken. It was a classic magician's trick. Make the audience look at one hand while the other performs the real magic. While the defenders scrambled their systems to track the incoming missiles, the Phantom Squadron continued its silent journey. They remained loco, hogging the terrain, completely invisible to the now activated radar arrays. The sky to the north might be alive with electronic signals and impending action, but here in the valley, the silence returned. The gambit was working perfectly. The Neptunes were a sacrificial offering, a calculated loss designed to buy the Phantoms the one thing they needed most, a clear and uncontested path to their objective. The enemy was looking the wrong way. The deception was brilliant, but the enemy was not a fool. While their primary air defense systems were focused on the Neptune decoys to the north, they still had other assets. A low growl began to echo through the valley, a sound that cut through the manufactured silence. It was the unmistakable, menacing chop of helicopter rotors. A Russian Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopter had been scrambled from a nearby airbase to investigate the local area, a standard procedure when primary systems were occupied. The Hunter had entered the hunting ground, and it was looking for targets of opportunity. The Alligator flew a low, sweeping search pattern, its powerful optics and thermal imagers scanning the dark terrain below. The command team watched in horror as the helicopter's search cone, a sweeping wedge on their tactical map, moved closer and closer to the Phantom Squadron's position. The drones immediately went into a scatter protocol, breaking their formation and dropping to hover just inches above the ground and the cold river water. They were trying to hide their minimal heat signature against the background temperature of the Earth, a desperate attempt to become invisible once more. It wasn't enough. The helicopter's sophisticated sensors were too good. A stream of cannon fire erupted from the Ka-52, a bright orange line that tore through the darkness. One of the phantom icons on the command screen blinked red, then vanished. A second burst of fire, and another icon disappeared. The operator's screens went blank. The command room was filled with a new, sickening silence. They were being picked off one by one. The helicopter was circling now, like a shark that had tasted blood, knowing there was more prey to be found. The survivors had to adapt, and they had to do it instantly. The mission was on the verge of total failure. The lead operator, his voice steady despite the chaos, issued a new command. The remaining drones were to abandon their planned route and head for the single largest piece of thermal cover in the entire valley: the main railway line. It was a huge risk, taking them into a more open and exposed area, but it was their only chance. They had to use the enemy's own infrastructure against them to survive the next crucial minutes. The railway line cut a straight, dark path through the valley floor. To the naked eye, it was just another feature of the landscape, but to a thermal imager, it was a unique landmark. The massive steel rails, dense and cold, retained the night's chill far longer than the surrounding Earth. They appeared as two perfectly straight black lines on a thermal display, a cold spot in a slightly warmer world. The surviving phantoms, now a scattered and depleted force, raced towards this line of steel, their last hope for survival. It was a desperate move born from a desperate situation. As they reached the railway, the drones executed a maneuver they had never practiced. They dropped to an altitude of just a few feet, positioning themselves directly over the tracks. By hovering above the cold steel, they masked their own faint heat signatures. From the perspective of the hunting Ka-52 helicopter above, the drones effectively vanished. Their thermal profile blended with the cold rails beneath them, confusing the gunship's targeting systems. The helicopter's pilot, scanning the ground, would see the railway line, but the small warm blips that had been there moments before were now gone. This tactic created a new wave of confusion for the defenders. The helicopter crew reported losing contact, the targets having simply disappeared. On the ground, the radar operators were still tracking the Neptune decoys to the north, convinced that was the primary threat. The information coming from different units was now contradictory. One reported phantom missiles, another reported stealth drones that vanished into thin air. The defenders' command and control structure began to show signs of strain. They had too much information, and none of it made sense together. The drones, now flying in a single file line just above the tracks, had become railway ghosts. They used the straight path of the railway as their new guide, a man-made river of steel leading them directly towards their target area. The helicopter, unable to reacquire its targets, broke off its search and flew towards the north, drawn by the more certain threat of the Neptune decoys. The phantoms had survived by being clever, by turning a simple feature of the landscape into a cloak of invisibility. The chaos they had sown was now their greatest protection. The sky was now a deep bruised purple. The first true light of dawn was minutes away. The surviving phantoms, a fraction of the original force, were approaching the target, a critical pumping station on a major oil pipeline. This was the heart of the operation, the reason for all the risk and sacrifice. The station was a complex of pipes, valves, and storage tanks, a vulnerable node in the enemy's energy infrastructure. The drones had one final clear run. The helicopter was gone, and the air defense systems were still distracted by the show in the north. It was now or never. The operators in the command room switched their focus from evasion to attack. Each remaining drone was assigned a specific target point on the station. They weren't aiming for the large, resilient storage tanks. The plan was more precise. They targeted the control valves and pumping machinery, the delicate and irreplaceable components that kept the oil flowing. The goal was not just to create a large explosion, but to cripple the pipeline in a way that would take months, not days, to repair. It was a strategic strike designed for maximum long-term disruption. With a final command, the Phantoms accelerated. They rose from the railway line and streaked across the last few hundred yards of open ground. This was the most dangerous phase, the moment they were most exposed. But the element of surprise was still on their side. The few guards at the pumping station were likely looking east, waiting for the sun, their attention lulled by a night that had seemed quiet in their immediate vicinity. They would not be expecting an attack from the darkness behind them, from the ground up. The drones came in fast and low, their small-shaped charges armed and ready. The first drone hit its target. A bright flash followed by the sharp crack of a high-explosive charge shattered the pre-dawn stillness. A crucial valve assembly disintegrated in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. A split second later, another drone struck a pump housing, then another and another. The impacts were not random. They were a coordinated surgical assault. The operators watched on their screens as their targets were hit one by one. The final push was underway, a rapid, violent conclusion to a long and silent journey. The surgical strikes were instantly followed by catastrophic failure. The pipeline, its pressure controls shattered, ruptured. A geyser of black oil erupted into the air, followed by a massive fireball as the volatile liquid ignited. A deep, rumbling whoosh echoed through the valley as the pumping station was engulfed in flames. Secondary explosions followed as other components failed under the intense heat. The silent, dark valley was transformed into a vision of hell. A pillar of fire and thick, black smoke began to climb into the rapidly lightening sky. By the time the sun finally broke over the eastern ridge, its gentle morning light was met with the harsh, flickering orange glow of a massive industrial fire. The column of smoke was visible for 50 miles, a dark stain against the clean blue of the new day's sky. For the defenders, the picture was one of utter chaos and confusion. Their primary air defense had been chasing ghosts in the north. A helicopter had reported and lost Phantom drones. And now, a critical piece of infrastructure deep behind their lines was a raging inferno. They had been looking everywhere except the one place that mattered. The mission was a success, achieved not through overwhelming force but through cleverness and misdirection. The Phantoms that were lost and the Neptune decoys that were sacrificed had served their purpose. They had created so much noise and confusion in the enemy's defense network that the system had effectively been paralyzed. The defenders had all the technology, all the weapons, and all the soldiers they needed. But their attention was a finite resource, and the mission planners had expertly pulled that attention away from the real danger. The drones had slipped through the cracks created by distraction. The smoking ruin of the pumping station stood as a powerful lesson. It showed that the most robust defenses can be rendered useless if the people operating them are made to look in the wrong direction. The battle was won, not when the first drone struck its target, but hours earlier, in the deep darkness, when the Neptune decoys first appeared on the enemy's radar screens. It was a victory of strategy over strength, a testament to the idea that in modern warfare, the real target is not always a physical object, but the mind of the opponent. The valley was quiet once more, save for the crackling of the flames.